work. Okay, I don't understand what that is. What's that little mark? Is it my light? Wish I had a proper phone stand. Will this work? Hopefully that'll work. Last time I went live I had 14 people. So I don't understand why is that done it like that. But on travel vlog it's done differently. Okay, so it's done it like that on both. That's good. And I'll do it on Reddit travel. Quite new to Reddit. Learning. Do I follow this thing? Joined, yeah. They might not let me post actually. We'll see. Only one way to find out. What's your favourite place in India till now? How much you spent? To be honest, I've only my mainland India experience isn't very much. I did a couple of days in Chennai. I made a vlog just getting lost in Chennai, but I only really come to the Andaman Islands. My only experience so far. Not to say that that won't change, but my ultimate experience of India is the Andaman Islands, somewhere which I know is growing for tourism internationally and in India as well, like domestic. I was here last year and the domestic tourism this year compared to last year is huge. There is a reason for that, which I will get to, and that is pretty much because they've opened an international airport here in Port Blair. They opened it about 6 months ago, and the new airport is amazing. The new airport is incredible compared to the old one. It's like magnificent, and I think now they've opened the international airport here on the Andamans, they're really pushing tourism. And maybe you can explain this better than I can, Shoban, but like India has a bit of an issue with the Maldives at the moment, so I think they're trying to encourage Indian tourists to less go to the Maldives and more come to places like Andaman, like Lakshadweep, and part of that is opening the new airport. But there's not, to be honest, like there's beautiful parts of the Maldives, but you can find just as much beauty here once you check out the smaller islands like Little Andaman, Neil Island, Havelock. They offer amazing tourism. So yeah, my favourite place in India is the Andamans, and even when I visit mainland India, honestly, there's something special to me about the Andamans. That's the place and also the people. So I think it's going to be very difficult to change that. I may have some amazing experiences in India and see some beautiful parts, but the Andaman Islands is just completely me, like 100%. So, but yeah, I appreciate that. First question of the day, please keep them coming. I'd love to just get into loads of discussion about India itself, or the Andamans, vlogging and all that. How do I copy and paste from Reddit? That is my question. There we go. Whereabouts are you from in India, may I ask? Let me just post one thing. Thanks for promoting India. It's, to be honest, there's a lot of people now. Yeah, each state is different. I think that's what people don't realise, certainly in the West, when it comes to India, is like it's it's huge. If you take into account the whole of India, you could. I know it's not a continent, but you kind of could see it as a continent. There's all sorts of different parts to it. You can be in two different places, have two very different experiences, and I think certainly in the West, people just put India as one thing. But I've known people come to India my whole life. I've been traveling for 15 years, and I know people that would be coming to India 15 years ago. But then again, nobody's heard of the Andamans. Like, I speak to anyone at home, even people that are considered like travelers, and I would say like going to the Andaman Islands, and it's like, where's that? Like, nobody seems to know about the Andamans, which is part of the reason why I came the first time, is because people don't come here. Like, that's seriously like one of the biggest things that made me want to come here. What it was, I was on a podcast a few years ago talking all about North Sentinel Island, and the way I see I don't know if you know this, but North Sentinel is like so world famous. The story about the Sentinelese tribe and all that. It's like you can go on YouTube and there's hundreds of videos about the North Sentinelese. So I was talking about them, and then I just actually looked at North Sentinel Island itself, and from the stories, from the idea of this uncontacted tribe for like 25,000 years, you kind of assume that North Sentinel Island is just in the middle of nowhere. Like, there isn't anywhere close at all around it. Like, you get some islands in the Pacific that just literally sit 4-5 days away from any other place. And then I discovered that actually North Sentinel was part of an archipelago known as the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, and I discovered it has the city, Port Blair. And I just checked myself for my own interest about, I wonder if it's cheap. I assumed it would cost a lot of money to get to Port Blair because of the remoteness, and I just found that wasn't the case. So I was like, boom, I'm going to go to this place. Because a lot of people from the West, certainly from the UK, they're more likely to go to countries like Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, do all that side of Asia, and it's like, I just don't. I would rather go somewhere where nobody else really goes. And since I've been here, I've obviously met people from the UK. Some British people are like me, they kind of want to do things a bit different, especially people that are already in India. A lot of the British people that I've met here have travelled throughout India, and I'm told Andaman Islands is like Goa 20 years ago, because Goa now doesn't have the greatest reputation. It's a party place. It's people. Put it this way, I was reading a forum and somebody was asking about if you can get weed here in the Andamans, and the answer was, this isn't Goa. And I've never been to Goa, so that kind of summed it up. But I've been told by people who have been to Goa, many years ago, that the Andamans now is like Goa was originally. That's the sort of best way to explain it. But what state are you from? Where would you advise I check out if I was going to be doing other parts of India? Chennai is a city. See, I've never done Delhi or Mumbai, and nothing really appeals for me to go to those places. But Chennai was crazy, man. I was in Chennai for 3 days, and it was just like too much. I'm not into places that are really full on, and Chennai was just nuts. It was maybe because, so I did 3 days in Chennai on the way here, and it was like to just be dropped in Chennai and just to go walking all over the place. It was like, you could tell it was intense. You could tell there was that element that I had to kind of watch my back a bit. The thing is with Andamans, and what a lot of people don't get, especially when I'm saying I go to India and they talk to me about how unsafe it is, considering I'm from a country that's ridiculously unsafe in the cities. It's like Andaman is extremely safe. It's extremely safe for individuals, for travellers. You will get crime here, but it's not major crime. People even say like they don't even know the last time a murder happened here in Andamans, especially in Port Blair. So it's considered a really safe place, and I certainly feel that when I'm walking around. Like I don't have any. I come across the odd like idiot. I was on a bus last week, and this guy, I think he was high, and he kept like wanting to touch my nose piercing, and I had to just be like, bro, like you better stop that right now. And I think his friends got it, and his friends sort of were like, stop doing that. But you come across the odd fool, you're gonna come across that in any place. So, but it's such a safe place, these Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Mm, Port Blair. Port Blair is like, I've asked some of my friends who have been in all sorts of Indian cities, and they say it's kind of like if you take, like, for instance, if you take Chennai and just take a very small part of it, that's kind of what Port Blair is like. It's you have the hustle and bustle, like the bazaars, they're very busy, lots of traffic, but it's not huge. It's not like a huge metropolis of that. You can pretty much walk. I'm kind of just outside of the city now. You can probably walk across a lot of the dense part of Port Blair in 20 minutes from one side to the other, whereas I guess if you're going to try and do that in Delhi, it would take you hours and hours and hours. It's just like huge metropolis parts of the city. But yeah, Port Blair's just not like that. It just really isn't like that. I think the main languages spoke here is Hindi and Bengali. I think they're the main ones. I think you do get some Tamil as well, because there's a lot of people that resettled here from Chennai. So I think that comes into it, but I'm pretty sure the main languages spoken here are Hindi. That's what you see everywhere. Anyway, yeah, keep them coming. I love this place. I absolutely love this place. I've been here for coming on 3 and a bit months. My time here will total around 4 months, and then of course the monsoon season comes. But then again, you got to think about, like, Andamans is quite far away from mainland India. When you look at it on a map, I'm much more closer. Sorry, give me one sec. I'm much more closer to like Thailand and Myanmar and that part of the world than I actually am India. So I know a lot of India is hot, but this place is so hot these days, like easily mid to late 30s. It's just a tropical island. But then the monsoon season comes and everything kind of shuts down. I'd like to actually experience the monsoon season. I really would. I don't know what it's like. I've heard a few different things. Because I couldn't imagine that with the monsoon season, the rain is just constant. If this place was to have constant downpours of rain, it just hasn't got the infrastructure to deal with it. Like, some of the houses you see are absolutely like, they're like shacks. They just wouldn't last. And you know, the canalization, the way that rainwater is dealt with, it just wouldn't work. So I think what it's more like in monsoon, it's going to rain every day, and it's going to be like flash downpours, but it's not going to be for hours and hours and hours. This place just couldn't take that amount of water. There's nothing really built to deal with that. And then from October to May, it's just like so much heat. So I really don't think this place has the sort of monsoon and the rain so heavy, because it wouldn't be able to deal with it in a way. Even like the smaller islands, like some of the places that people live in on the smaller islands, they would just disappear if you had like insanely bad weather constantly. It wouldn't work. So I think it's more just like heavy downpours, but not all day, every day. It's weird because I've spoken to a few different people and they've kind of said a few different things, so I don't really know how to gauge that. But yeah, I've been here since February the 5th and I've not seen any rain. There hasn't been rain here in 3.5 months. And not just the fact that there hasn't been rain, you get serious heat. Even some of the locals here and the Indian people here are like, bro, like, how do you deal with this? And to be fair, sometimes it's even too hot for me. I have to be careful about how much time I'm in the sun. So if I'm in the sun like quite a lot one day, like a couple of days ago I was vlogging at a beach which has a lot of crocodiles around it, and I was in the sun for about 2 to 3 hours, so I knew the next couple of days just stay out the sun. Yeah, but it hasn't rained here in 3 months, 3 and a bit months, which is crazy for me because I'm from a city where it rains all the time. Yeah, I love this place. I believe the Andamans is a little bit more expensive than mainland India. That's quite a known thing, and that's because of the remoteness. Like how much stuff is actually imported here is always going to put bits on the price. Not so much with fruit and veg, because these islands are just amazing for growing that. Somebody told me that Neil Islands specifically is known as the veg basket of India, and going back, and probably still today, a lot of vegetables go from this place actually get taken back to the mainland. Like veggies, fruit and veg, they're tropical islands, so you can grow so much here. But apart from that, a lot of things are imported. I think a lot of the drinking water is imported, the fuels, things like coal. A lot of the powerhouses on these islands exist on burning coal, so all of that has to be imported. A lot of the products, or the electronic products, so it's you do find like that the actual prices here on the Andaman they're about, I'd say about 30% more from the mainland. And then that kind of happens again if you're going to go to a really remote, smaller island. The prices are going to be quite high. Not for the fruits and veg, they stay really, really low because they're grown there. But other things, the price, you get about a 30% increase on the price, because the more remote the island is, then the more they have to import. It's literally as simple as that. So yeah, when I go to Neil Island, I stay on a place called, I go to a tiny little island called Neil, and the place I stay, like the guy has his own farm, and pretty much most products that he actually sells, eggs, milk, all of that things, it all comes from his own farm. So he tries to keep his costs low. But then again, I know people that own restaurants on Neil Island, and they have to come back to Port Blair at least once a month just to get stocks, just to get things. And the menu thing's most beautiful. Neil Island, my tiny little island. But the problem with Neil Island is it's hard to be connected, and it's like when you're on the smaller islands, they have beautiful resorts because they cater for a lot of people that come here on honeymoons. A lot of people come here for honeymoons, so you have like the super nice hotels which charge a lot of money. If you're going to try and find a place for like 800 rupees a night, it's not going to be the best, and with that comes the insects. I think that's the hardest thing when you're on some of the smaller remote islands. They're beautiful, but they also come with a lot of insects. Like every place I stayed in on Neil Island, at some point I had spiders in my room, cockroaches, but you cannot escape cockroaches, but like some of the spiders are like this. Plenty of insects that I couldn't even identify. I wouldn't even know if they're dangerous. I had to keep like taking pictures of them. and I'd show them to my guy Shivanka, like, Shivanka, is this dangerous? And he'd, most of the time he'd be like, no, it's cool. But there was the other thing I showed him where I was like, yeah, you don't want to get bitten by that, especially the centipedes with all the legs. Um, yeah, he said you definitely don't want to get bitten by them. And the dogs as well. On the smaller islands, they don't really deal with the street dog problems too well. And I've noticed it in a year difference. There's a lot of dogs, and it looks like every single female dog is pregnant, like every single one. And apparently pre-COVID, before COVID, they used to have lots of sterilization programs in place for the dogs, and that just hasn't happened. And yeah, the dogs are a problem. The dogs are a big problem, especially at night time. Here on South Andaman, not so much, and especially in Port Blair, because it's a city. It's always kind of lit up, and there's always people around. But once you go to the smaller islands, after like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, there's nobody about, and the dogs just see it as it's their world. They're obviously very protective. They operate in packs, and yeah, if you're out late, the dogs are going to be a problem. They're going to be extremely aggressive. The dogs all day, they just sleep all day. They don't do anything. They don't bother you. But as soon as it comes to night time, the dogs they, they become a problem. There's no other way to explain it. They become a massive problem. And that's probably my worst experience here has existed because of the dogs, the street dogs. Ugh, and you don't want to get bitten by them. It's kind of known that they don't carry rabies here. If you get bitten by a dog, you don't end up with a rabies shot. Like, I assume in other parts of India, the dogs probably carry a lot more diseases. Here, luckily, that they don't actually carry rabies, but still, it's pretty common for dog bites to attack. So when I was on the small island, I very briefly met this British girl as I arrived. She was leaving, so she left like 2 hours after I arrived. When she came back to Port Blair, she got bitten by a dog, and I know that because my friend's a doctor here in the main hospital, and he'd when she'd come in with the dog bite, he told her he was from the UK, and then he told her that he has a friend from the UK, which is me, and then she said, "Oh yeah, I met that guy on Neil Island like a couple of hours ago." So, so yeah, it's quite strange how much of a small world this place can be at times, where like even now to the point if I'm walking around Port Blair, I get recognized. I know people, I know business owners, and it's kind of weird for me because I'm 6,000 miles away from home, and I'm starting to like be recognized by people and things like that, which I love. It makes me feel like Andaman's a bit of a second home to me, and it is a place that I can be for absolutely months. If they didn't have the monsoon season, who knows? Maybe it'd be like a year thing. But the problem is with my visa as well. I'm only actually allowed to be in India for a total of 180 days. It works weird. It's like you get a 1 year visa, but you can't be here for a year. You get a 1 year visa, and you can only be here for a maximum of half of that. So I'm allowed, in total, in 1 year, I'm allowed to be here for 180 days. So it's like that can be 30 days here, 30 days away, come back for 30 days, or I can just stay for 180 days straight, which is 6 months, and then leave. That's kind of how it works. The visa situation is quite an interesting one. Yeah, going live on YouTube, trying to see what it's like. So feel free to anyone who joins, hello, welcome. Do hit me up with any questions. I want to check my Instagram, see if anyone's posted on there. Something I want to try and do quite regularly is YouTube Live. Okay. Close that. issue if questions do come in off Instagram, they come into my inbox. Maybe, I don't know. I think I've got another short dropping today. And if you're watching this not live, do go check out some of my videos of this place, the Andaman Islands, which I believe is not a state of India, it's a territory, which does provide some differences. Healthcare is completely free here. I can literally fall over, break my arm, and all my healthcare is free. And that's quite a big thing, especially when you're a traveller. Travel insurance isn't always so cheap. I do have travel insurance. I have to pass through the Middle East to get here, and you're not allowed in a lot of Middle Eastern countries if you don't have travel insurance. So I have to have travel insurance, but it's nice to know that on these islands all your medication is free. If you need anything, antibiotics, anything like that, it's all completely free. And there's no cap on that. It's not like just small things get me free healthcare here. My doctor friend told me, like, you know, you can have, I don't want to say it, but you can have some like big things happen to you and you still have access to free healthcare here on the Andamans, which I don't know if that's the case in all India. Someone feel free to let me know. Do you get free healthcare in India? Does it work like America, where if you have a job you're automatically covered through that? I don't know. But I think it surprises a lot of tourists, the free healthcare thing. It really surprised me. I get it, free healthcare for the locals, and I once asked somebody about it and they said what it is, because the Andaman Islands are so important to India, like they're so important geographically and strategically. Like there is a lot of Indian military here, a lot of Indian Navy and military exists on the Andamans, because it's that first buffer zone to the east, you know, and this place was occupied by Japan during parts of World War II. I believe India doesn't have the best diplomatic relations with countries like China, so the Andamans is like the first barrier to anything in the east, so it's an extremely important part, and due to that they kind of want to keep Andaman healthy, good and Indian, so they kind of, there's certain perks which happen on the Andaman, certain perks to do with tax that I'm not fully aware of. I think taxes are paid here, obviously, but I think a lot of taxes in Andaman stay in Andaman. It doesn't all go centrally to mainland India. And then there's the healthcare thing. People of the Andamans get free healthcare, and most Indians here, you know, there's a lot of Andamanese now that are born here, and I sometimes say to people, you know, do you feel Indian or Andamanese? Like if you was to kind of just pick one, which one would you pick? And it's quite a mixture, because obviously a lot of this place was really populated when India got its independence post World War II. Lots of people came here from West Bengal, from Calcutta, from Chennai, from those places, and that's what populated the Andamans. So there's always a lot of people here have links back to mainland India, but then there's some people that have been here for so long where, you know, they've never actually been in mainland India. They regard themselves completely as Andamanese, and also people that were probably from tribes here that have sort of married into the Indian culture side of it. I've got friends who are originally from Little Andaman, and they swear like they're not Indian, they're Andamanese. They only identify themselves as Andanamese, and if you go back through their family, it all leads back to like tribes from the islands and stuff. So it's quite a mix, but obviously the culture here is extremely Indian, and it flies the Indian flag, and it's an Indian territory. But it's different, it's just different. It's not just another Indian state, far from it. It's just different. The thing is with Andaman, it really could be an independent place. It's big enough to be. You know, it's got an international airport. It's got a capital city. It's got a population of, I think it's around 300,000, but I want to check that. And of course, it's the Andaman and Nicobars. So you got the Nicobar part of it as well, and Nicobar is actually quite far away, but it all just comes under the same Andaman and Nicobar. So Andaman Islands population. What's the population? 4.34 lakhs. Can someone explain to me what that is? The islands occupy a total land area approximately blah 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 with a population of 380,000. So, let's say if you was to talk about Andaman and Nicobar Islands as an independent country, 380,000 people, a capital city, a big fishing industry, tourist industry. It really could be an independent country. It would have to trade things like energy and coal, and trade a lot. But yeah, it could. I think this place could easily stand alone and be just a completely independent country. There's independent countries that are much smaller, so it could be. But like I mentioned earlier, it's really important to India. It's a really important part of India. When it comes to the military, comes to the navy. Like I think there's a lot of islands. There's over 500 islands of Andaman and Nicobar, and all from whole north to the very Nicobar Islands in the south. There's a lot of navy, and I'm not actually allowed to go to the Nicobar Islands as a tourist, just as a tourist here. There's certain islands that I can't go to, which is interesting because there's a document which still exists today, and it does state that I can go to North Sentinel Island, although I know I can't. I've never even tried, but apparently it's a mistake, and it's supposed to say that you can visit South Sentinel, but it's official. And I found the document again when I was having a conversation with somebody about 2 months ago, and we found the document. We were talking about the American guy that went to North Sentinel Island and died, and I got up the document. It's official from the Indian government website that states you can visit North Sentinel Island. It's number 17 on the list. But yeah, the Nicobar Islands in the south, I'm not allowed to go to, because I think there's a couple of reasons for that. Like Lakshadweep, the infrastructure is just not set up for tourism. There's not enough guest houses. If they just opened it and let's say suddenly they had an influx of hundreds of tourists who wanted to visit, it's like they just wouldn't have enough food to feed them, not enough energy to power, not enough places for them to stay. So they have to be very careful. There's a few islands where I can go, where I have to speak to the forest department and get permission, but there's some where they're just off bounds. They're just off bounds to tourists, and that's mostly down in Nicobar. There's other parts of Andaman that you're not allowed to visit because of the tribes. Even parts of main, south and middle Andaman that you're not allowed, certain areas which you just cannot go because of the tribes, and you're just not allowed to interact with them. You're not allowed to take photos of them. Not so much in the city, like really quite far out from the city, but I could probably travel for 2 hours by road and be in a place that I'm not allowed to be in, like strictly not allowed to be in. So yeah, it's an interesting place how it has that mix between sort of a place that is trying to grow its tourism but also trying to protect certain parts of it. Redskin tribe, I don't think I'm allowed to interact with them. There's another name and I don't want to say it wrong. It's something like the Owumba tribe or the Owunga. But yeah, these islands are still home to many tribes, not just the North Sentinel tribes, which is the famous one, the Jahawa tribe. I'm not sure if you're allowed to interact with them either. So yeah, there's certainly a lot of places on Andaman that I'm not allowed to go as a tourist. I even think like domestic Indians that visit here aren't actually allowed to travel to as well, which I guess is fair, you know. And especially some of the really quite remote tribes. Like, let's say I just wanted to go and visit a tribe, I can easily make them really sick, you know, and it's because I think it's for their protection as well, and probably for their privacy. I've heard somebody said, like, if you do end up coming across a tribe and you like you're just out and you somehow come across a tribe and you like take a picture or something, that like they fucking scream at you, they throw shit at you, and things like that. So yeah, it's good how much they control it. The woman who owns the hotel that I'm in right now, her job, what her old job was working with children from tribes, which I think would be so fascinating. Obviously, more of the tribes that are very mixed into the public, etc. Yeah, tribal areas are certainly off limits, which that's fine. I'm not one to. I don't want to really go and visit a tribe. Even when I'm in Andaman, sometimes I get stared at like. There's a certain part of the city in the south. It's not very touristy, but you kind of pass through it. And I guess if I just walk down the street, I just get stared at, and it's not malicious. I know it's not an evil thing. I get it. It's more people just looking like they probably maybe haven't seen a white dude before. So imagine if I went to the tribal areas, like I would literally be seen as an alien. So I kind of get that. And then yeah, the islands that have tribes on them, you're just strictly not allowed to visit. North Sentinel being the main one, but there's plenty of other islands where you just can't go to for many reasons, and I respect that. There's one island I'd love to go, but it's about 12 hours away. It costs a lot of money to go there. It's called Barren Island. There's nothing there. It's called Barren Island. There's nothing there but a volcano. But some of my scuba dive friends, some of the guys who run scuba companies and things like that, they go diving there, and they say it's just unreal for the scuba experience. Like, you have some amazing scuba experiences here. You've got a lot of the corals, a lot of beauty. The water is so clear, but even those places like that I can access compared to Barren Island, when they go diving in Barren, they see all sorts of things. But I'm not big on scuba diving. It's probably one of the main things that Andaman exists for, and its tourism is based around scuba diving. Probably. So if I talk about the international tourism, the international tourists, probably 90% of them come to scuba dive. Most people you meet that are international, that are coming here, come to scuba dive. A lot of the Indians, a lot of the domestic tourists as well, they may come here to scuba dive, but also they come here a lot as like honeymoon couples. They're always on day trips, so that's what I don't understand. Like, Neil Island is amazing, and it's small. It's only 8 kilometers from one side to the other, but you can't see everything on it in one day. And a lot of they'll come on a tour, so they'll be in Port Blair and they'll visit like museums and stuff. Then they'll go to Havelock for 2 days, maybe do a dive, go to Neil Island for one night and be out. And I never got that where I was staying on Neil Island. I don't think there was any Indians that stayed more than one night. They'd always just come, be there for one night and go. And I was there for a whole month, and it was quite strange to me. But I learned a lot of the domestic Indians that come here, it's kind of different than the international tourists. Like us international tourists, we're booking everything ourselves. We book our flights into Andaman, we find our own places to stay. We may decide to go to one of the smaller islands, so we have to go and get our own ferry tickets, etc. But a lot of the Indians, they don't do that. They just book a tour, and they'll just pay one amount to a tour company, and then the tour company organises everything. And I learnt this because I was at the jetty and I come across this group of Indians, and we got talking, and they said like, "Oh, are you travelling to an island?" I said, no, I'm just here to buy my ticket today. I'll travel in a few days. And they were like really, really surprised. that I'd come here to buy my ticket. They were like, "Oh, like how do you even do that?" And I was like, "You go to the ticket office. You got to present your passport." And I was like, "Do you guys not do that?" And they said, "No, we're just here on a tour group. So from the moment they land in Port Blair to the moment they leave, it's actually an external tour company that sets everything up and deals with everything." And that seems crazy to me. I get it's probably more convenient, but the way I travel is like you kind of just do everything yourself, pretty much. The Andaman Islands are an Indian archipelago in the Bay of Bengal. These roughly 300 islands are known for their palm-lined white sand beaches, mangroves, which isn't good because in the mangroves that's where the crocodiles live, and tropical rainforests. Coral reefs supporting marine life such as sharks and rays make for popular diving and snorkeling sites. Everyone seems to snorkel here. I did a scuba dive. I don't go snorkeling, but I did do a scuba dive and it was amazing. But yeah, everyone comes here for that. Indigenous Andaman Islanders inhabit the more remote islands, many of which are off limits to visitors. I don't want to read the whole Wikipedia page. Let's check out the whole Wikipedia page. And like it is, it's a Q&A, people. If you've got any questions about Andaman, my experiences of India, budget travel, vlogging, YouTube, anything like that, please throw a question in the chat. And I want to have some fun with it as well. If you know any countries, I want you to put the flag of a country into the chat and I want to see if I can guess it right. I love having fun with flags. So yeah, the Andaman and Nicobar Islands is a union territory of India. It consists of 836 islands, only 31 are inhabited. Wow. So there's pretty much 834 islands that don't have any people living on them. That's absolutely crazy. That's crazy. Grouped into two island groups, the Northern Andaman Islands and the Southern Nicobars. So yeah, you get Andamans in the north and the Nicobars are all like south. Like the Nicobar Islands are really quite far away from where I am right now. But I guess they all just come under the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Port Blair is the capital and largest city of the territory. That's where I'm sat right now, sat in Port Blair. It's located about 1,000 kilometers from Chennai and 1,200 kilometers from Kolkata. Most of the people here, most of the people that settled here, settled from Chennai or Kolkata. That's quite a known thing. The islands are sandwiched between the Bay of Bengal to the west and the Andaman Sea to the east, with the northernmost point, blah 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 blah. Yeah. Great Nicobar. So Great Nicobar is actually the most southern point of India. I think people think, oh, when they say what's the most southern point of India, they'd say the very bottom of Kerala, like where India mainland comes to the tip. But no, the actual real southernmost point of India is actually on Great Nicobar Island, and then you're in Indonesia, I think, if you carry on. The territory shares maritime borders with Indonesia and Myanmar. And Myanmar to the north and Thailand and Myanmar to the north, and then Indonesia to the south. So if you was to go that way, you get to Myanmar, Thailand, and if you was to go south, you'd get to Indonesia. The islands occupy a total area of 8,000 kilometers and a population of 380,000 people. The territory is divided into three districts: Nicobar, South Andaman, and North and Middle Andaman. I'm in South Andaman. A lot of the islands that you can visit as a tourist, like Havelock and Neil Island, there or come under South Andaman. And then you get Middle Andaman and North Andaman, which there is a place in the north I can go to. It's called Diglipur. I'd consider going. It'll take me like 6 hours on a bus, but some people have said like that bus ride would be crazy, but really might be worth doing for a video. I'm not sure, because I think what I'd struggle with is A, the heat. Oh god, the heat. and actually finding somewhere to stay. I don't think you can just turn up in Digleypore and expect to find a hotel. It doesn't work like that, so maybe I have to check that one out. The capitals at Car Nicobar, Port Blair and Mayabunda. So I read actually about Car Nicobar, which is they've just opened a bigger airport there, and they're trying to make it easier to travel from South Andaman to Car Nicobar. Genetic and cultural studies suggest that the indigenous Andamanese people may have isolated from other populations during the Middle Paleolithic era, basically 30,000 years ago. So about 30,000 years ago, that's when the seas rose and would have cut the people off from the Andamans from the mainland of what you would now see as like Myanmar, Thailand and things like that. Because obviously it's only, I think, in the last 100 or so years that Indians have migrated over to Andaman and made it a part of India. Like, it wasn't a part of India, I don't think, a long time ago. But anyway, civilization has been dated back for 2,000 years. In the 11th century, Cholos, one of the 3 Tamil kingdoms, used the islands as a naval base. So yeah, it's always been used as a naval base because of its closeness to Southeast Asia. The Danish were the first Europeans to arrive on the islands in 1755. Wow. The islands became part of the British Raj in 1868. During the Second World War, the islands were invaded by the Japanese Empire, and after independence in 1947, the region became a province and later a union territory after the adoption of the Constitution of India in 1950. You do see Japanese influence here in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands quite a lot. You get a lot of Japanese World War II bunkers along the coast. They still exist today. There's probably one 20-minute walk from where I'm currently sat. All along the coast, you get the Japanese World War bunkers, and they were actually ruthless, the Japanese. And it was believed, like, when the Japanese were first arriving, that the Japanese were here to liberate the Andamans from the British Raj, but they were like 10 times worse. They were ruthless. They've executed a lot of people, the Japanese. You get a lot of memorials around. A lot of the memorials are because of executions that the Japanese carried out here. It's pretty mad. The islands host the Andaman and Nicobar Command, the only geographical command operated. What have I just done? Just clicked a link that I didn't want to click. Go back. The islands host the Andaman and Nicobar Command, the only geographical command operated jointly by 3 major wings of the Indian Armed Forces: the Army, the Air Force and the Navy. Because yeah, there's just so much military here. Even the main airport that I fly into as a tourist doubles up as a Navy airport. It's like tourist normal airport on one side, and you look across the runway and it's just all military. And plus you're not allowed to film there because of that reason. You're not allowed to film in and around the airport as it's a defence area. Hindi and English are the official languages. I didn't know that. Hindi and English are the official languages. The major spoken languages include Bengali, Tamil and Telugu. Indigenous people speak any of the Andamanese or Nicobarese family languages. Hinduism is the majority religion in the Union Territory with a significant Christian minority. The islands are also home to the Sentinelese people, an uncontacted tribe. See, I'd kind of disagree with that. I'm reading from Wikipedia right now, and I always take Wikipedia with a pinch of salt, but Hinduism is the majority religion, that's true, but it doesn't mention anything about Islam, and you get a lot of mosques around. I sort of live right now between 2 mosques, and call to prayers mad because I'm directly in between 2 call to prayers, and it's weird. But certainly from what I've seen, I don't think I've seen a couple of churches, but they're not proper churches. They're like tiny little shacks that just have a cross on them, and they're sort of called churches. So yeah, I'd say definitely Hindu's the main religion. You get temples absolutely everywhere, um, and you do get a lot of mosques dotted about, but you hardly see any churches. So I don't know why it's mentioned that in this article, but yeah. The name Andaman might have been derived from Hanuman, after the Indian god Hanuman. Oh, there we go. So yeah, very, very, very far away, and the most southern point of India actually is here in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Beautiful part of the world. Mm-hmm. 1789, the British colonised the Andaman Islands and set up a naval base and established a penal colony. I've been on the island, so the island that they actually set up and used as their base is literally a kilometre that way. I can see it from my window. It's an amazing island called Ross Island. It's now sort of set up for a lot of, it's like acts as a museum. There's an old church there from like the 1800s, an old nightclub, and it's kind of like nobody lives on the island. It's absolutely tiny, but I believe that's where the British based themselves to launch their attacks here in Port Blair and on main Andaman. And yeah, I can't see it right now because it's dark. I can see the lighthouse, but yeah, the island, I can pretty much see it out my window. It's called Ross Island. So then a lot of the Andamans was used as a penal colony. That's a huge part of its history, is the fact that a lot of the freedom fighters of India were sent here. A lot of the freedom fighters that were fighting back against the British Raj were sent to jails here. One of the jails, the cellular jail, which is literally, you can see it out my window again, it's just there. That now acts as a museum. I've not been there this year, but I went there last year. It's pretty dark. And apparently even Gandhi himself was sent there, which is interesting because there's certain families, there's certain freedom fighters that were quite famous, and they obviously have certain family names. And the woman who owned my hotel, her grandfather was one of the quite famous freedom fighters. His name, their family name is Pant. So yeah, she's part of that family, and that's also the name of the hospital here as well. They named the hospital after that freedom fighter. A lot of the whole freedom fighter world is very connected with this place. A lot of the parks, a lot of the parks and streets and roads and things like that are named after a lot of the freedom fighters here. Indeed, yeah. It was completed in 1906. The jail was used to house political prisoners and independent activists away from the Indian mainland. Independent activists. They should just call them freedom fighters. It was quite interesting. So, where you buy your ferry tickets to go from island to island, you get the queue for the gents, the queue for the ladies, and then there's another queue which says senior citizens / freedom fighters. So yeah, like it's kind of everywhere you go there's some connection to freedom fighters here, and I think like the freedom fighters are very, very much adored and loved by the families that settled here, because I think once the independence came, a lot of the families of the freedom fighters were offered land and whatnot, as in like parts of their respirations, to be like, okay, I think they had the choice to receive huge amounts of compensation and go back to mainland India, or to receive compensations and actually stay here on Andaman, and I believe a lot of them stayed, and they were kind of known as like quite famous families. During the Second World War, the islands were invaded by the Japanese as part of their attack on the Allies. So basically the Japanese came to attack here as part of their attack on the British and established control over the island. The provisional control was passed onto the Azad Hind of Subna Chandra Bose, and that's one of the islands actually, in 1943, based on the understanding with the Japanese that the islands renamed as Shahid Dweep. Wow, I didn't know that. Shahid Dweep was called Martyr Island, and Swaraj Deep was called Self-Rule Island. So Shahid Dweep is Neil Island. It's the island that I've stayed on for a month. It's the island that I love, and I've only known it as Shahid Dweep or Neil Island. But I'm guessing that might be, is that what it translates to? If anyone's Indian watching this right now, does Shahid Dweep translate directly to Martyr Island? I know Dweep means island because a lot of them have a word and then Dweep, so I guess Dweep translates to island, but I did not know that Shahid translates to martyr. That would be super interesting to know. Bose appointed General A.D. Longathorn as governor of the islands, who had limited power, while the real control of the islands remained with the Japanese. In the years under Japanese occupation, there have been reports of widespread looting, arson, rape, and extrajudicial killings. Yeah, the Japanese were ruthless. The Japanese were ruthless. Yeah, apparently that's the general consensus of everything that happened. Post-independence, I'm going to keep this going till about an hour, about 4 minutes. During the partition of India, the British announced, the British always did so much bad stuff throughout the whole world, like they did so much bad stuff. During the partition of India, the British announced their intention to retain possession of the islands and use them to resettle Anglo-Indians and Anglo-Burmese on these islands. The islands were claimed by the India National Congress for India and the Muslim League for Pakistan during the partition negotiations. After the India independence in 1947, the islands became part of the Dominion of India. Don't know what that is. As per the Constitution of India, the islands were designated as the only Part D territory in 1950 to be administered by a lieutenant governor appointed by the government of India. The islands were later used to resettle people displaced during the partition, with a substantial number of displaced immigrants establishing agricultural colonies. It's interesting, when you're driving around the Andamans, there's a lot of places that has colony names, like this colony and that colony, and like you might drive past like what's quite a big compound and it's got a name like colony. It's weird. It's like you don't really get villages here, you get colonies. It's quite hard to explain, and I don't really fully understand it. The islands became a separate union territory administered by the government of India following the reorganisation in 1956. The islands have been developed into a key defence establishment since 1980 due to its strategic location in the Bay of Bengal and the Strait of Malacca. Yeah, that's what I mean. It's a lot about this place is based around defence. On 26th of December 2004, the coast of the Andaman and Nicobar Islands experienced a 10mm, 33-foot high tsunami waves following an undersea earthquake in the Indian Ocean, which resulted in more than 2,000 casualties, 46,000 injuries, and rendering at least 40,000 people homeless. And someone was telling me a lot of the deaths that happened around the tsunami weren't from the wave itself, but were from things like cholera that happened on a lot of the diseases that came after. The locals and tourists on the islands suffered the greatest casualties, while the indigenous people largely survived unscathed due to movement to high ground following the oral traditions passed down over generation that warn them to evacuate following earthquakes. So yeah, I think a lot of the tribes and the smaller islands, they've probably dealt with earthquakes a lot in these regions because they're quite common. There was an earthquake here about 2 weeks ago when I was in this very room at 4:30 in the morning, and it was scary. But yeah, I guess if you've grown up understanding that that's going to happen a lot, then you pass that down through generation to generation. I guess when you know an earthquake comes, then they know how to deal with that. But yeah. My quite in-depth look at the Andaman Islands, and I think I'm going to wrap up this live. I've been going for an hour. What time is it? 11:15. I think I've just done a new short drop. But yeah, okay. I am signing out from this one. And my aircon's just kicked in. Bye bye bye.